Okay, gang, so now let's look at our first big type of fungus. This is the Chytridiomycota. The Chytridiomycota, like we said earlier, is also called flagellated fungi, simply because their spores are flagellated, which means that they're going to be swimming through water. Flagella don't work well for swimming through air. It's got to be through water. Because they do that, they're called zoospores because they act kind of like animals. And because they have the flagella, which is kind of really unique for fungi. Most live in soil at high elevations, and that soil does have to be moist in order for them able to move around. But some live in sheep and cow guts and helping to aid in digestion of cellulose, which is a really tough thing to break down. But another large group of this is actually going to be parasites, which cause some problems for some different organisms around the planet. But here you can see, here is a hyphae and another hyphae, and this together forms a what? That's right, the mycelium. And here's a good picture of the mycelium. This is the spore-producing body, all right? And this is going to be full of spores, and those spores are going to have flagella. When this rips open, they'll pour out into the water, and they're going to swim around and move around and spread out, which is great. That's what you wanted to do. This is, again, the Chytridiomycota. There's this term called mycosis whenever you get into like being a nurse or being a doctor or studying diseases. And so my question to you is, what is the term chytridiomycosis? Like, what is a mycosis? And what do you think chytridiomycosis is, and what does it affect? Give you a second to think about it. It should be kind of obvious. A mycosis, because we're studying fungi, is a disease. Any disease caused by a fungus is usually called a mycosis. A chytridiomycosis is a disease caused by a member of the Chytridiomycota. And I'll give you a hint. What do you think it affects? Oh, press the wrong button. There he goes. Chytridiomycota actually affect frogs. And as people start studying and things and moving around the world and exploring and going around, they ended up spreading around this Chytridiomycota because the spores just got on their boots or on their work stuff and was moved around. And it started getting into some populations of frogs around the planet. And Chytridiomycota, remember, a lot of them live in, they're parasitic if they can live in water. And those fungus started getting into the frog populations and started wiping them out wherever they were found, and that's no bueno. Frogs play an important part in our ecosystems and our ecology, so we need to keep those guys around, but they just weren't used to this type of fungus. They didn't evolve with it. They don't have any resistance to it, so this fungus is really playing havoc with some frog populations around the world. So our next big group of fungus is called the Zygotomycota. Now, this is one you're probably a little more familiar with. Right? They're also called zygote fungi. Some good examples of them are like things like the black bread mold that you come across whenever you eat bread. This is what it looks like up close. Most of these reproduce asexually as a mass of mycelium, but some can produce sexually if they have two different mating types and they're able to touch each other. Zygote fungi are typically known for spoiling food. So anytime you look in the refrigerator or on on the shelf of bread, and fruits and vegetables, that's Zygomycota. This is a great example. One thing about them is the Zygomycota, they're actually really high in protein, and so a company has actually taken this zygote fungus, this bread mold, and actually condensed it down into something that's called tempeh. And tempeh is a high protein supplement. And there's actually some good recipes online for cooking tempeh. For the people who have had it, they actually tell me it's pretty good. I'm not going to tell you this. Curried tempeh grilled cheese looks really good. I'd probably try it. Right? Don't think when you're hungry. We eat mushrooms, which is a fungus. Hey, this is basically the same thing. Let's eat it. See what it tastes like. But these are all types of zygote mycota. So again, there's big ones. They're known for spoiling food. And the best example of it is the bread mold. Now, you know when you're growing up and you saw something like this on bread, if it was this bad, you probably threw the bread away. But if it was a little bit starting to grow on the side, you know you pinched that off and stuck it in the microwave and nuked it for a second, all right? And if you didn't, you know your mama did, all right? So this stuff does not hurt us. It would taste nasty if you ate it in large amounts like this, and also because, remember, it's digesting the food and getting the sugars out of it. So what's left is not going to taste sweet because it's, the fungus has already digested the sugars. So the food would taste terrible. But all in all, this stuff isn't going to hurt you if you eat it. If you eat vast quantities of it, it may make you sick. But other than that, you're going to be fine. All right? So just pinch that little piece of mold off of your bread and eat your sandwich. You're going to be fine. All right? So there's a special group of Zygomycota called the Microsporidia. There's over 13,000 named species, but these are all parasitic, and they do some pretty bad things inside of us. Some cause diarrhea, abdominal pain, and cramping. So, diarrhea, where will you be when diarrhea strikes? You got to kind of watch out for this. And it's pretty bad, diarrhea, right? You don't want to get this, okay? Another type of it called CCD, which is colony collapse disorder, which is something that we find in honeybees and other bee species. And that's not good because most of us know that the bee species are starting to decline on the planet, and bees are huge pollinators of all our fruits and vegetables, provide a huge ecosystem service to us. We don't want to lose those. So studying that CDC is really going to help us understand bees and hopefully be able to, solve the problem and bring some of the bees back before they all go extinct, and our way of life on this planet changes dramatically. So this Microsporidia, this is not a good type of Zygomycota. You don't want this one, okay? But let's move on away from the Zygomycota. So we've covered the Chytridiomycota, we've gotten the Zygomycota. The next type is the Glomeromycota, and these are pretty simple to memorize what they do. Glomeromycota, that's simply this: 150 named species, yeah, but their big thing is they formed a relationship with plant roots that's very mutualistic, in that they help each other out. So just like when you drink through a straw, think there's only 2 points where things can go in and out, the part that you put in your mouth and the parts down here. Well, think about a plant sucking up water, okay? It can only pull up water where the tip of its root is. So if the tip of the root's here, it can't get the water that's over here. It can only get water that's over here by the tip of the root, right? And nutrients and other things that are in the ground. So that's kind of a limited area. Yeah, they may have root tips all over the place, but still, if you zoom in a bunch, there's still a lot of space in between the root tips. This Glomeromycota, these Glomeromyces, these grow into and attach to the roots of plants. And here's a little example of it. Here's the root. Here, all this other stuff. These are the root tips on the green. But over here, you have all of this other fungus that's growing. The fungus adds a lot of extra tips to the roots. So it allows it to not only get the water that's down here, the nutrients that are in here by the root tips, but also all the water and nutrients that are in between. And it really boosts the growing capacity of plants. And a lot of plants, even here in the South, have grown a mutualistic relationship with this type of fungus. And we call that fungus, it's the Glomeromyces, but we call that mycorrhizae, meaning small roots. And that's what this is called. These are mycorrhizae that we get from the Glomeromyces. Here's an example. Here's the root tips. And you can see all the extra little fungus that's growing all over it, that's adding so much more tubes to absorb so much water and more nutrients. Okay, here's an example of root tips with the mycorrhizae fungus, and without. You can see the grass over here has grown a little taller, it's a little greener than the grass is over here because because of its relationship with this fungus. It now has access to a lot more nutrients and water to help it grow. Now you're probably thinking, okay, that's what the plant gets, but what does the fungus get? Well, simple. The fungus needs energy to survive. Now, energy is going to come in the form of glucose. It can't produce it itself, but the plant will give glucose that it's made in photosynthesis. It'll give it to the fungus. There's your mutualistic relationship. It's a beautiful thing, and we're glad that we have it.